If you are a business owner who is looking to get your money right this tax season, then we have you covered. Starting today on the Unbreakable Business Podcast, we have launched a new series called Money Talks, where we have the conversations about money that actually matter. Over the next 5 weeks, we are talking about anything and everything when it comes to money, from taxes to money mindset and pricing strategy. We have got you covered, and I cannot wait for you to tune in. And another thing, I know so many of us are getting ready for tax season, so you don't want to miss out on this free resource that we have for you, which is our tax filing checklist. This checklist helps you get ready and organized for filing your taxes. So make sure to head to the description to get your checklist. And now let's get into it. I'm so excited about today's episode on the Unbreakable Business Podcast. We are leaning into the stories that we tell ourselves when it comes to money and money mindset. Katherine Pomerantz, who is an accountant and money coach, joins us on the show to talk about the stories that we tell ourselves when it comes to money. Now, believe it or not, our experiences and the way that we view the world has absolutely shaped the way that we think about money. Katherine breaks us down the questions that we need to be asking ourselves in order to have a much healthier relationship with money so that we can make more in our business. Now let's get into it. Hello, Katherine. Welcome to the Unbreakable Business Podcast. How are we doing today?
Oh, I'm very excited. Thank you for asking.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're excited to have you. And I'm a storytelling strategist. We're talking about storytelling and money. And I was like, oh, this is music to my ears. So I'm just so excited for this conversation. So let's get into it. I'm really curious to know, especially since this is what you focus on helping business owners essentially rewrite their money story. What has your relationship with money looked like for you?
Oh yeah, my personal money story.
Yeah.
So I am a accountant and I run a traditional accounting firm and a financial education company, but I'm not formally trained in it. So my actual
Oh,
formal training is in storytelling. I was an actress, I was a dancer.
yeah.
I was a very pretentious artist. I really wanted to do the director choreographer thing.
Mhm.
So I was very comfortable at telling stories in abstract languages. I like to be a little weird with it. It was a fun job. I enjoyed it immensely, but it was also stressful.
Mm,
For various reasons, that could be a podcast interview in and of itself. I was not set up
mhm,
for success in that career. And
mhm.
so I worked 60, 80-hour weeks, 3 or 4
Wow.
jobs at a time. And I truly, it was like, oh, it's been a great week. I made like $300,
Mm.
which, I mean, I'm a little older now. That was, more than 10 years ago. That was still not a lot of money more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was my early professional experience. And I was very fortunate that growing up, I was able to see different people in different socioeconomic backgrounds. I knew that you didn't have to struggle with money all the time
Mm,
and that you didn't have to work all the time, and that even making lots of money doesn't necessarily mean it becomes less stressful. Sometimes people who, I know plenty of people who didn't make tons of money who still weren't as stressed as me about it. And so
mhm.
I just got really curious. I was like, there's something about money that nobody's told me, I think. I cannot work harder to earn more of it.
Mm,
So that's not going to work. So I have to go figure out what that is. I need to go figure out how money works. And then I could probably help a lot of people. Because famously, other artists, other people I was with, they also were not, necessarily having the healthiest money stories. So I really was like, I think I could help a lot of people if I figure this out. And I fell in love. I had
mm.
that thought, and about a year later, I had started my own accounting firm because I loved what I was learning. I loved what money can do, and I was just so excited to go help people with it that I knew I had to go start a business. So that's the short version. I mean, do we want to go farther back? Do we want to talk about childhood money story stuff? That all is relevant, but I don't know how much we want to spend
No,
time on that today.
I think that's great. I think what you offered was a really, really great foundation because I think that's amazing. Well, number one, it's super cool that you just being a storyteller and your expertise and what you leaned into. And I was trying to be, and like, I think a lot of us, especially when we are starting out early, you're just like, you're grinding, right? We have to be so scrappy. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it's so easy to continuously find ourselves in that type of cycle. And so I love that you were like, okay, no. And like, I'm just going to go all in and figure this out so I can help other people. Cause money, like we love to make it, but we just hate talking about it. We hate dealing with it. We hate asking people for it, but we love it when it's in our hands, when it's in our account. You know what I mean? And so I loved that you like pushed through those barriers. And that's one thing I'm really curious about for you, as like when some of these money stories that were coming up that you were struggling with, like how did you push through that?
Mm. Okay, so I'm going to take two things you said and I'm
Yeah.
going to kind of expand on those. So one,
Yeah.
we love to make it, and I said, well, not everyone.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So that's the first thing that I think it's important to emphasize about money stories. Your money
Mm,
story is your internal thoughts and beliefs and actions and activations around
mm,
money.
mhm,
Money is going to bring up an emotional response in our brains and in our physical body that we need to understand and recognize, but it's also very, very personal. A lot of
mhm,
people may not want to make more money secretly because it could mean changing who they are. It could mean changing their
mm,
community, right? Like, who are you to make more money than your ancestors? Who are you to make more money than your parents, right? Like, that can truly
mhm,
be an activator. Or who are you to be rich? Rich people are greedy. Rich people are evil. Rich people do things that hurt
mhm,
other people and their planet, right? And so there can be all sorts of weird story stuff that's wrapped up into making more money.
mhm,
So the second thing you said is, how do you push through it? And I want to be very careful around words like push, because if you're coming up against stuff like that and you just push on it harder,
mm,
you're actually just going to get more and more and more and more stuck. There's so much about our response to stressful situations that we learned when we were kids. And a lot of that isn't just in our heads, it's in our bodies, it's in our trauma responses, it's in our true stress
mhm,
response of our body. And if we're coming up against and thinking about money in ways that is activating the stress response,
mm,
we're going to slow ourselves down. And so
mm,
you can't push through that. It's impossible. You can keep pushing, but you're just going to keep pushing with more stress, and eventually your body will stop working, because that's what
mm,
stress does. So one of the things that's unique about my work, one of the things that's unique about the way that I help people, is in helping people gain clarity on their past with money and on the way that money was used in their family and their culture of origin, in the place where they live now, right? The different countries they could have moved to, the ways that their partner used it, the way that they've used it, the way that their kids have used it, right? All the different ways you've seen money used around you. Unfortunately, it's not like it's set out in this big, beautiful curriculum and you just follow along and learn all these things. It's like, no, it all kind of gets mixed together in this weird melting pot, and then it all gets like shuffled around in our brain, and different significant life events always
mm,
have a significant financial event. And now it's all just one big, weird mix that,
mhm.
unless we're mindful, could start to come out in strange ways. So for
Yes.
me personally, you mentioned like, oh yeah, it's so easy to get stuck in that hustle mindset. I will default to that still, because it was the first way I learned to work. Was, we'll just keep working. Just try more things, just do new things, just keep learning, just keep going. I need to recognize that that is my response, so that I can recognize when it's happening, so that I can cut myself off. I don't want to keep pushing through it. I want to pivot. I just want to like, nope, nope, nope. I don't want to live that way anymore. I literally actually had health issues in my 20s because I was in that push through, push harder, and keep going. And I was just coming up against my own stress response as I up leveled my business, as I kept doing this like arts career, right? And so I now know, I recognize when that's coming up, and I can slow myself down and I can make space for it, so I can start to rely on the other part of my money story, which is the future I want to
Mhm,
have with money, my vision for how my story is going to be different. So,
mhm.
does that make sense to you, Akua? Did that answer your
Oh
question, you
my
think?
gosh. Yes, it does. And I love that you took it a step deeper, because it is true. Like our whole lives and experiences, our childhood really truly does shape the way that we view money and how we operate in the world. And that's something too, even with like Unbreakable Business Podcast, where I wanted to bring in these conversations, because I say this all the time, that we are more than our business. Like the way that we view the world, our experiences truly
Mhm.
shape the way that we run our business, whether we believe it or not. And so I really want us to take it a step further of, how can we, let's talk about how essentially our past experiences, our childhood, culture truly does shape the way that we view our relationship with money and also how we make money. Can you talk a little bit further about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, why don't I use some client examples because
Yeah.
we both like storytelling. Stories
Yes,
are a
we
great way to
do.
explain. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So, okay, some of my favorite examples, some really clear examples of ways that when we're not mindful how this
Mhm,
process is going to slow us down. I was working with a woman who was very faithful. Her faith was very
mm,
important to her, and serving others was very important to her. And that was obviously a very values driven decision. And she actually had a lot of success as a result because people loved her back because she loved authentically and she helped authentically. And so
mhm,
she had a very strong network, a very strong community, a very thriving fan base of people who really wanted what she was selling. And for years, she was plateaued. She could not get above
mhm,
a few $100,000. It
mhm,
just, like, everything always seemed to be working out fine, but no matter what she tried, she just couldn't get there.
mhm,
And when we started to dig into, okay, what's the block, right? Because this is not a strategy issue. What's the block? When we really dug into it, the thing that came up for her is that she had never once prayed for her business, despite loving God so much for this particular
mhm,
individual, because if she became rich, God would stop loving her.
mm,
Because who is she to make all this money? Because she had so internalized her work was for other people's benefit, and that she had
mhm,
to sacrifice, and that she had to play small so that she could always be amplifying others, and that was the good way to behave.
mhm,
So even though now, as a much older adult, I mean, this one was in her 50s, as a successful parent, as a successful community leader, as a successful business owner, that internal message of being a good girl and not being greedy and not, taking care of your fellow man meant that she was doing things to push opportunities away from herself, and it wasn't safe. It did not feel safe for her to earn more money. And that's one of the things I love this example because that actually comes up for a lot more people than we realize is that
mhm,
as we start to up level, there's an amount of money that feels allowable, that we have permission,
mhm,
that we have given ourselves permission to make. And when we start to come up against that threshold, our basic human need of belonging is going to be what becomes triggered.
mhm,
You will lose the respect of somebody that you love. You will lose the support of somebody that you love because you will have grown beyond that threshold. We all
mhm,
know somebody like this who, like, I had another woman that I was working with. Her mother was the voice in her head where
mhm,
her parents were working class. And so she and her husband had this really successful thing. And while her mother was very happy for her,
mhm,
her mother also used to be like, oh, here comes the rich family, like little remarks like
mhm,
that, never really meaning anything by it. She had a good relationship with her mother, but she had spent her whole life trying to impress and respect this woman. And those snide remarks meant she was playing small because she was losing the respect of somebody she loved, right? And
mhm,
that's your mother. You have a
mhm,
biological need for your mother to love you,
mhm,
and you don't outgrow that, right? So that's an example of one way that if we're not careful, if we're not aware of how this will activate us, when we get to that threshold, we'll get stuck, right?
yep, mhm,
Um, Another example, actually, I mean, it all comes back down to that idea of safety. Another good
yeah,
story is I had a client who was an immigrant and she was the oldest daughter. And in the country where her family was from, her father was a successful business owner. And he made lots and lots and lots and lots of money, but it was never enough to take care of the extended family because more family kept coming out of the woodworks, more people kept putting demands on him, and all of his wealth was eventually lost to other family members taking advantage of him, essentially.
mm, mhm,
And She, as the eldest daughter, inherited that and took it over and paid it all off, but then could never make money herself. And it never came up until she started her own business. And she never put together all the pieces of, oh, wait, if I start to make money, I feel like all these people are going to come out and want to take advantage of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it doesn't always have to, it sounds so dramatic when I describe it here to you now, right? It's like, whoa, these big epic dramatic stories, right? Like of millions won and lost, and oh, we got a little Freudian. We're talking about like your mother's love, like all these, like, like we might be like, well, that doesn't sound like me. I've had a pretty easy life. I've had a pretty stable life. Like I've been to therapy, right? I've had this handled. But I often find that we haven't looked at it from specifically how money has affected these different situations in our family history and in our personal
Mm-hmm.
lives. And therefore, we haven't recognized the ways that when we bring up to make money, when we're pitching ourselves, when we're trying to sell something, when we're trying to, convince people that we're experts, how that emotional stuff is going to come with it. And we need to make space and make sure that we know how that's going to kind of affect our stress response, affect the way that we're going to play with this, and recognize the ways it'll make it harder. Not that it has to be hard. I don't think it has to be hard, but if I don't recognize it and I don't make space to handle it, I'm not going to get all the results that I could potentially have.
Yeah, no, I loved all of those examples so much because I think, again, it just shows to the fact of like we as human beings, number one, how we're all human. And it was just so interesting to hear just all the different stories of, I can definitely relate to the last story of just like being a child of immigrants. And, it truly is like pouring into the community and family is something that's very first and foremost before anything. And that's something, though I love my family, I still pour, but I've had to, even me and my siblings, we've all three had to really deconstruct of like, I can't pour into you if I can't pour into myself first. Like I have to take
Yeah.
care of myself. And that has been a huge challenge in our household because, right, we have our elders and the family and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And so I absolutely relate to that last story so much because that's
Yeah.
something that like me and my sister especially have been really deconstructing because yeah, it's really heavily in our culture of like you give and give and give at the expense of yourself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but even too, I just was at a speaking event and similarly there was somebody who had a similar story to the first story that you shared. And so, what I mean, where it's like feeling like because especially if you are in, especially if you are a person of faith and a believer, right? It's viewed as like, you have to serve, serve, serve again at the expense of yourself. So even though they're all so different, there's so many like also different, there's still so many underlying things that are all very, very similar. And the feeling that we all feel is very similar. And so I just love that you shared all three very different stories. But at the end of the day, it just shows how much that these beliefs can truly, really impact our life and our business. But I think a lot of us sometimes we don't piece it together or realize it until we're like in the thick of it. And I think
Yes.
we as business owners really need to um be a little bit more proactive. And so for you, because you said earlier, like the last story, like she didn't piece it all together. How can we start to piece it together to where we can actually start to see our triggers so that we have the tools in order to be like to take care of it, to move so that we can no longer feel stuck?
Oh, absolutely. That's such a good question. So, an exercise that I often have my clients do, I call your money autobiography, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, my methodology is the money storyteller method.
Mm-hmm.
Money was invented by humans, and humans are storytellers
Yeah.
by our very nature. It is how we make sense of our chaos. And so, money is one of the ways that we have invented to make sense of things we value. And it is in every culture, in every, industry, in every education level, people deal with money because it's so effective at telling those stories. So let's apply storytelling to this in a classic storytelling framework, right? Okay, we'll use like the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hero who's going to go on an adventure, and money's going to be somewhere in this story for you. So if you're the hero, let's just get clear on the character backstory, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I get really frustrated about, so I'm an accountant and I'm a money coach. I've I have things I get frustrated about on both sides, right? But one of the things I get frustrated about with my fellow coaches is that there's often this language of overcome, like push through, like, okay, it's basically the implication being like, once you've done this work, you've done this work and it's over and you've overcome it and now you know it and now you're immune from it. Or now you've handled that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just not human. That's not the human experience. Your lived experience is always your lived experience, just like any character in any story. That's their backstory, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the character backstory comes with us and makes our story beautiful and interesting and unique and special. So I don't need to rewrite your story from the back. I'm not trying to get you to change anything about yourself. I just want to be clear on what that is. So truly, write a money autobiography for yourself. I have a list of questions that I use, but some of the most simple ones can be like, how did your mother handle money? How did your father handle money? What was the first thing you were ever paid for? What's the most amount of money you've ever made? You can ask yourself questions like, when I get money, I usually fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make more money because fill in the blank. I'll stop right there. I probably have like 30 of them, right? But those 6 are good ones, right? So like, how does your mother handle money? How's your father handle money? Now I can't remember all the 6 I gave you. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Should have prepped this one.
No, you're good. You said, how does your father handle money? How does your mother handle money?
How was the first time you ever made money?
Yes.
What's the most amount of money you've ever made? And like for what?
Mm-hmm.
When I get money, I usually.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't make more money because.
Yes. Yep. Those are the 6.
So ask yourself and just, journal on that, or like give yourself a voice note, or just like a paint on it, for heaven's sakes. Just like give your brain time to sit with, and you'll start putting together the dots yourself. You'll start to be like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense, that there's this, that there's this, that there's this, that there's this. And then I also want to highlight, because I think that we've really done a good job of emphasizing the negative side of this, but there's a real positive side too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also really important to recognize, is that this is never a one-sided story, to use that. And this is so common for immigrants, right? My mom's a first generation immigrant as well. And so like that idea of taking care of your family, but yes, you've needed to figure out what that means for you personally, and how you want to set boundaries, and how you still want to build wealth, and how that should be distributed. But the value of taking care of your family, don't get rid of that. That's the best thing about you. Like the value of your community, that's so rare and special. Like that's something that other people don't share. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Keep the value, identify the value that drives you, and then figure out how your money can get you more of that job without having to overdo it, or without being put in environments where it's not going to thrive. Right. I'm like, oh, we can now talk technical and like talk all the different ways you could put money in place, like take care of legacy and investing and all these things. But I'm like, I don't know if we need to get into that, but that's basically
great. Yeah. No, this is helpful. This is very, very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's to go to your first question, is gain clarity about your money autobiography. Ask yourself some questions with these ideas about, what significant life events did I have and how was money involved? Right. That way, oh, money supported me in these ways and money let me down in these ways. And then identify how you want that to be different in the future. Right.
Yes. Yep.
Caring for your family is super important. So what does it mean to actually leave a legacy of wealth for the next generation? What boundaries do you need to have in place so that actually happens? And then you now feel good to carry that forward, because you're not changing anything about yourself. In fact, you're taking the best parts of yourself and you're just getting more of that as you get more money. Money's really neutral. I think we should emphasize that too. Money doesn't mean anything at all. Like I said, it's a storytelling medium. It's a language. It's a way of making sense of all the things happening in our lives. So it only has values or stories that we bring to it. So some of the most generous people I've ever met are really wealthy. In fact, it's easy to be generous when you're wealthy, because you have your cup is filled, right? And I want more of that for everybody. And some of the like the most small-minded, selfish people I know also have very little, right? Those two things aren't intimately tied. I know the reverse on both sides of the spectrum, but it had nothing to do with the amount of money they're making. And it's just you as a person. So I want money to make me more of who I am. And that's the path I want to follow, is that money only ever amplifies myself. And so I want to know myself well so that I'm amplifying the best parts of myself with my money.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. There's just so much to unpack. And it was so, so good. The autobiography, like creating your money autobiography. Like, even if you just start with one question and you don't like, it's going to lead to to
Yeah.
places that you didn't even realize. So just taking the time down in like however you want to do, whether it's a voice note, whatever, and just sitting down and just answering those questions, because you're going to start seeing patterns. And then once
Mhm.
it's like number one, self-awareness is key. So once you have that self-awareness, you're then going to be able to identify those patterns. Then if something does come up, you're like, okay, I have identified this. I'm realizing this is happening. So like, this is what I need to do to stop it. And I think that's just so, so important as business owners, and just for us to be able to take that time to really truly get to know us, and also choose, and we can create boundaries that are going to work for us. And I also just loved how you said of like, okay, like, yes, focusing on the negative, but sometimes the things that are amazing about ourselves, like we view as negative, are absolutely amazing about ourselves. Like everything is kind of, I don't want to say balance, but like sometimes doing too much of a good thing can be bad for you, right? Like, so again, really
Yeah.
like, how can you like figure out those boundaries of like, okay, like obviously valuing your family is huge, and like you don't have to give that up. It's not one or the other. It's, you can still have it all. It's just, again, what are your boundaries? How can you pour into yourself so that you can continue to do that, but also to still honoring yourself in the process? So I love that that's like a really, really good way to look at it.
Yeah, and I think it's also important as you do this work to
Mm,
tell the story in the most generous light possible, where
mm,
you haven't done anything wrong. You've never done
mhm,
anything wrong with money. How many people took I mean, like I said, the way that we're educated about money is a weird mishmash of every single life event that's ever happened to you and your parents and your grandparents. Because it
mhm,
all gets carried forward and then just all gets mixed up in your body and your memories. And so
mhm,
you have not been taught how to do this. So you've had to learn as you go. And so, like, telling that, not to keep harping on this one example, right? Of
no,
like,
no,
oh,
no.
I gave way more money than I should have and now I regret it. Acknowledge that you felt the regret, but don't feel bad that you did it. You didn't do
Mm,
anything wrong and you didn't like the experience. So now you know next time to create a different experience for yourself. That's all that
mm,
happened. I think that's really important to emphasize. I always talk about significant life events, have a significant financial event. Easy to think of that in the negative, but again, in the positive, like
mhm.
a wedding. The average wedding in America now costs $27,000.
That's the
And
average?
that's the
Oh my,
average. It's
I'm like,
insane.
I know, well, I know, but I'm like, I feel like when you hear other states, because Chicago, like the average is definitely much higher than that. So I'm always
Mhm.
like,
Right?
but to your point of like how we just, that's a perfect example of how we view money. Cause I'm
Uh,
like,
yeah, you're like, oh, only
I know
27,000.
that's what
Yeah.
I thought. I was like, oh, that's great. And then you're like, wait, that's may not be for everybody, but how we view it, right?
Right,
So
right, right. Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
sorry, continue.
no, you all just learned something about Catherine's money story. My One of my personal money story things is I'm really super frugal. I'm very fear driven. I'm a
Mm,
super saver. It's
mhm,
very hard for me to spend money. So
mhm,
that's a huge positive. Huge positive.
mm,
I've been investing since my early 20s. Go me.
mhm.
As I grow and expand my business, being unwilling to spend gets in my way.
Yes.
But I know that and I know how to account for that, right? So, but okay, so the example of the wedding that I was going to use is that my youngest sister, whom I adore, had her dream wedding in many ways, and it was such a blast, and it was a really cool experience, and everyone had to travel internationally, like all the bells and whistles.
Yes.
And in hindsight, she's like, I can't believe I did that. We really shouldn't have done that. I said yes to paying for so many things for so many people just so that they could be involved and just take part. And she's like, I cannot imagine doing that now. But it was also a really cool experience and everyone got to take part. And so that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but at the time, that's what you valued the most and you got the experience you wanted. And so don't berate yourself and don't feel shame
Mm,
because of your past with this stuff. And that's I think important is just know how we want it to change in the future and allowing that feeling of like, yes, we want to do differently,
mhm.
but don't again, the more we shame ourselves about it, the more we're going to get stuck and not be able to move forward. It's like, okay, I did that. I don't like that experience. I know that I'm going to default to, ooh, I'm going to feel really like, okay, me with spending, right? I'm literally going
Mhm.
through this right now. I am hiring as we speak. A job posting went live yesterday. Very excited. I am one of the world's best cash flow managers I literally get paid to do this for clients because I only work with business owners. We have a
Mhm.
bookkeeping and CFO firm right through my accounting firm. Like this is what we do. So I know the numbers work. The math works. I know I'm going to make money because it's a proven system. I'm still sitting here daily needing to make space for the fact that I feel unsafe paying for things I don't have the cash for right away because that was how I was
Mm.
raised, because it's unsafe to spend, because you have to always be saving. So I'm not stopping any of that because that's my character backstory. There is
Mhm.
nothing wrong with me. This is a totally natural way to react in stressful situations. So I am just making space to like, all right, I know it's here. I'm going to let it all
Mhm.
out and then I'm going to keep working. And so that's the next level for you, is like gain clarity about what it means, gain clarity about how you react to it, and then allow that to happen and give yourself, it's okay. It's okay that's your backstory. It's okay that you've made mistakes in the past. Have a ritual to let the stress out in a way that it's like all I'm doing is releasing these emotions that are normal and natural, and then I'm going to keep doing exactly what I'm doing anyway. I'm going to
Mm.
be terrified and I'm still going to scale my business.
Yes.
Go me.
Go you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that so much. And so I'm even curious just for you because you said like for your money story is like you have always been a super saver and
Mhm.
now you're hiring, which is absolutely exciting. You're obviously nervous about it. And so what does some of your rituals look like to help
Oh,
you work through
absolutely.
that when you get stuck?
Yeah, so I have a money ritual framework that I actually teach people about.
Mhm.
When you come and approach your money, it should be repeated. It should be something
Mhm.
that you do regularly. One of the things that I think a lot of us do is we wait till we become activated and then we do a lot of self work to get back to neutral. And I just don't
Mhm.
want to waste the time. So I do the work ahead of time. So I come at it neutral and then I can go through the hard stuff fine. So that's the first key part of the ritual, is
Yeah.
that let's do that. Make money my teammate is what I call it. Money's my teammate in business. I'm assigning money jobs. Let
Mhm.
me do enough work so that I'm coming at it with that mindset already of I'm a money storyteller. Money is how I make sense of my business. Money is how I get things I need and want. So, what mindset work do I need to do that? So, this could be meditation. This could be prayer. This could be yoga. This could be just clean your desk, right? Something that
Mhm.
brings you into that zone, right? Gets you in that flow state.
Mhm.
Then I want you to look at your value centered business plan. We talked about how important values are to this work. So, mission, vision, values. What's your why? Why are you doing this? Who are you helping? This could be just quickly look at your vision board, read through the mission, vision, value statement of your business, bring pictures of your family and put them on your desk. All right, money. Then we'll go and look at our bookkeeping. Then we'll go and look at what I call the money map, which is the financial dashboard of, okay, for that future money story, point me in that direction, right? So taking
Mhm.
my current P&L from my bookkeeping, from my organization, looking at what was my forecast, what were my KPIs, what did I say I wanted? How close am I? How far away am I? Why are I not? Let's just pay attention to the patterns. Let's read this story as we go along so we can keep making edits so that those numbers keep going the way we want it to go. Then take action, because all of that is thought work. Beautiful,
Yep.
lovely,
Yep.
necessary. Do something immediately before
Mhm.
you stop to take that strategy in the real world. So whether that's reach out to your accountant to ask a question, delegate something to a team member, put down more time on your calendar to keep researching something, right? Maybe you didn't have time to
Mhm.
finish. Maybe you need to ask a friend for help. Do something that will take you 30 seconds, block off time, keep this ball moving forward. So that's my
Mhm.
money ritual framework. I like to have a list of different, like that for that first one of like making money my teammate, getting into that money mindset that's really healthy. I kind of have like a list of my favorite things that get me in the zone.
Mhm.
Sometimes I only have a minute because I'm busy and I just need to get some admin done. And sometimes it's time to redo my money map. Sometimes it's time to redo the whole budget, the whole strategy. So I might like take a whole day and go for a hike, right? Like, so have a list of things for you that help get you in that zone and do that work before you get into the hard stuff.
Mm.
Um, yes, this is not my first time hiring. So I know I'm going to be fine. And I'm still doing this all the time because as a business owner, you are committing to new and different just by the very nature of owning a business. And
Yes.
all this is ultimately is how we respond to stress.
Yes.
So let's have a healthy relationship to our stress. That's really all this is about, biologically. That's what we're
Mhm.
doing. It's just that money happens to be a particularly stressful and emotionally charged topic. So Let's give it a little extra attention.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that so much of like how can you get yourself in the zone before doing the hard work? It's really just like regulating your nervous system, being calm because when you are that way then like you're clear. It's a lot easier for you to make those decisions. And I love what you said too just like how you're looking even at the data. The data is always telling you a story, right? And so you just
Mhm.
have to be in the right space to be able to see the patterns, see the data so that you can make the necessary decisions in your business. And so I just have loved that so much. Like I'm like really excited just to go back and even continue just like deconstructing my own money story of like how so that I can show up a lot more confidently in my business. So, as business owners, right? And we are now working on our money story and all of those different types of things. And I'm realizing, like what you said, this is an ongoing process. Like it's
Mhm.
never going to change. It's never going to, um, I think again, as we reach to new levels in our business, we have to keep doing a lot of those inner works. And so the question I have for you is what is the one thing that you have seen amongst business owners that is holding them back from making more money in their business?
Hmm. Hmm. One thing. Not looking at it.
Mm,
Everyone that I know who's a millionaire is looking at their money at least weekly.
mm,
And when we remember that money is a teammate in our story, there's a whole training that I do that's specific about the hero's journey. Um, but just to kind of like do it really, really, really fast so we can hone in on your question
mhm,
is we don't want to make money the treasure, which is the thing you win at the end of the story. You're not waiting around for money to come because you did everything right. That's not helpful. That's not useful.
mhm.
I don't want to run a business or live a life without money. I tried that as an artist. It sucked. Let's not do that. I don't
Yeah.
want to shit on anyone, right?
Mhm,
Money's also not the villain, right? That comes up a lot with the examples we've used of how having more feels unsafe because of what it means about us as a person. All that is a story, just like we have to deserve our money, we have to earn our money, we have to work hard for the money, we have to have the right strategy, we have to put all these things in place before
mm,
before we can launch. All of that is just delaying our success.
mhm,
Money is our teammate. Money comes in the beginning of the story, in the middle, right in that training montage section after our inciting incident. Like they are here to work as hard, if not harder than us, because money doesn't actually get tired. Money can keep working even when we sleep. So we need to assign money jobs. So our money has been deployed, it has been spent, it has been used. It is then going to flow back to us. That is how cash flow works. It sounds very woo woo, but guys, I am an accountant. I'm very literal. I can measure the flow in your business.
mhm,
Money cannot sit still. It is not a real thing. It is purely an energy source. It cannot be in one place. It is always moving. A cash flow report, like the statement of cash flows, that's a big financial accounting term, cannot be zero. It will always be negative or positive, up or
mhm,
down, always moving. So you've sent money out. Check in with your bookkeeping, read your financial statements. Let money tell you how it's doing on the jobs you gave it.
mhm.
What is the return on this money that we're using? And so I kind of have like a secondary thing is like, let's set clear success metrics. Let's give money clearly assigned jobs so we're not just spending and praying that it's going to come back. Like I'm all about gut instinct and making things on like fact. I'm a creative, right? I make decisions on the fly very quickly, but I want to know I'm right because my numbers are supporting me because I've gone and asked my money. Money, where are you thriving? Money, where am I making the most of you? Money, where are you like feel like you're doing really well? It'll tell you. It'll tell you how it is being used and what kind of return you're getting from your use of it. So
Mhm.
there's some obviously like implied like math and strategy and how to do that, but genuinely truly, if you're looking at your money and you're looking with this idea of story in mind, you will see patterns, and that's all you need. That's all you
Yes.
need. I have business owners that I work with where we do all their financial reports and they don't know how to do any of the math. They hired me. They don't want to do the math, but they'll still look at that number and be like, that number's not right. I can't tell you
Mhm,
why that number's not right, but I have been looking at this long enough. I know the patterns in my business. Can you check that number for me, Catherine? And they're
mhm,
always right. Yeah, oh, you're right. The formula wasn't pulling in right. My bad. Because Excel's
mhm.
terrible to update with data, right? So my bad. Let me update that right now. How's that looking? Yep, that's what I was expecting to see. Thank you.
Mm.
All you need to do is pattern recognition, which is all storytelling is, which is all creative thinkers are very good at. And so what's keeping you from making more money? How often are you looking at it? How often are you asking money? Make more of yourself for me and come back.
Yes. I love that. And I just love that you reemphasized again that money is your teammate and you're giving it a job.
Mm-hmm.
It is your
Yeah.
teammate and you are giving it a job. So as you're like, even too, like even for me, I've also been like trying to also come from a place of gratitude whenever I am like expenses in my business and my personal life. I'm like, I get to pay this. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
even how I've been looking at it as like, even because like sometimes people get anxious paying their bills or expensive or whatever. And I'm always like, I get to pay this. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is a gift that I have the enough money to pay my bills, that I can pay for my groceries, that I can pay my contractor. Like I have enough and I am so grateful for that. And so I'm like, go do what you need to do, because again, like looking at money neutral has completely changed the game for me. But now even to you adding of like looking at it as your teammate, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
okay, right. And
Yeah.
so like now it's a lot easier, like even for me, I'm like, okay, if I was already looking at it neutral and now it's my teammate, I feel more comfortable, right, being able to pour into my business strategically, of course, right? Looking at the patterns and pouring into my business in a way that, like, again, like I feel confident about the decisions that I'm making and feel really good about that. And so I love that, especially as business owners, we have to be looking at our finances regularly, like really setting that time aside, especially if you want to be successful. Like I've said before, and I'll say it again, knowledge is power. You're educating yourself so that you can be able to make the right decisions for you and your business. And so, Katherine, I have loved this conversation. It has been amazing. And so, I have two things. We love to do a rapid fire.
Okay.
We're experimenting with that on the show. So don't be surprised if I ask follow-up questions. I have been, I'm always like, I don't want to move on yet, but why? Well, why? And my team was like, that's not rapid fire, Akua. I'm like, yes, it is.
I'll play along. I have an improv background. Whatever you throw at me, let's
Whatever.
go. Yeah.
Perfect.
Let's
Okay.
do
Okay.
it.
So here,
Yeah.
all right, here we go. What's the worst money advice you've ever heard?
Oh God. Oh my God. That there's such a thing as bad money advice. I know that that's sort of flipping on its head, but I like to again, because that shame, it's
Mhm.
not good or bad. Is it effective or not effective for what I want right now? Usually people
Mm.
giving advice, it's good advice, just not in the context in which you're receiving it. There's not enough knowledge about how money works. That's often part of the problem, is that, oh, that's
Mhm.
good advice for this person in this situation for this thing that they want. Like, so you need to get more specific about your goal and how money can be used to get that goal specifically. I think that's the
Yes.
only advice that's useful. And so, although I'm biased because I'm like, that's why people pay experts like me so we can customize it
Yes.
for you. But yeah, the worst advice the bad money advice is over like, well, I don't know, putting bad on it is like, I don't treat money that way. Sorry.
Love that. I love that mindset. Like even just the way to look at it, I'm like, oh, that's so important. Okay, the best investment you have ever made in your business and life.
Oh, my team, always.
Mm,
You know, as much as I'm afraid to spend more, I get to be a good boss. Oh, I love it. I
yes,
love it. I
yes.
love pouring and sharing my money with other people. 100%.
Oh my gosh, love that. Okay, what's one thing every entrepreneur should stop spending their money on right now?
Anything that feels draining.
Mm, yes, love that. Okay, what's your biggest money flex and what's your biggest money fail?
My biggest money flex and fail. Ooh, same one actually.
Okay, okay.
I've talked about this in other places, so if you want to stalk me and find the whole story, you're welcome to. But I had a staff member when I was first starting to expand my team who committed fraud and lost us 43% of our clients at the time because things got a little messy. And that was probably our biggest fail, is that it had expanded and scaled so fast that obviously I did not invite this person to commit fraud. I did not tell this person to go lie.
Mhm.
But there were leadership things that I have since learned a lot about doing that, and I've put better systems in place. And so it's never, ever, ever even possible now moving forward. That being said, we lost roughly 50% of our revenue overnight.
Yeah.
I was a new mom. I had just come back from my first maternity leave. I kept my whole team. We kept going. I kept investing in the business because I'm really good at what I do. I really know how to
Mm.
measure returns on investments, measure cash flow, like measure what's working and just do more of that. So even when I could do less than ever in the business as a first-time mom with an infant, with 50% of my revenue gone, I'm still here. And
Mm.
it worked out fine. So biggest fail is also my biggest flex.
Yeah. I mean, that is a major flex though. And I think again, that just speaks to what having an unbreakable business is all about. It's like, but no
Yeah.
matter what happens, is that you have the value, you have the expertise to keep going, and you are going to figure it out. So that is, thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. Okay, last one. The most unexpected way that you have made money.
Oh, well, it's a very recent one, but I'm
Yeah.
experimenting with like pouring into my friends more. I made some affiliate sales. I run an accounting. Yeah,
Oh,
I was like my newsletter is like
okay,
making me money.
girl.
You know,
Yes.
yeah, I was because I'm always promoting things and like I'll promote this podcast, but I'm like, oh, I got paid. Look at me. That's so nice. Some people bought my upsells, so I'm not a copywriter, not my area of expertise, but it was really fun it was really nice to see that payback, and I was like, I'm glad people are finding value in what we're sharing. So
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. And Catherine, I have loved this conversation. And so every question we love to end with is, what does having an unbreakable business mean to you?
yeah, my flagship coaching program is called Unstoppable.
Mhm.
So Unbreakable is like, heck yes, please more of that.
Yes.
And what it means to me really is having that financial foundation. If I
Mhm.
have a stable financial foundation, I can go out and be as creatively messy as I almost cursed as I want.
You can.
As I damn well please. And I think that's really important to emphasize is that systems and processes in the right spot allow
Mhm.
for more freedom. So to me, having strong financial systems, knowing what needs to be in that foundation for my business, it means I really am unbreakable. I know that from
Yes.
experience, and I know that from helping thousands of other clients and coaching people. So
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I love what you said too, having the right systems, but also in the right spot. That's
yeah.
something too that as business owners that like we really I just wanted to emphasize that like having systems are great, but also to like knowing exactly where to put the system in or where to refine it. Cause that can truly make all the difference. Like I said before, like between businesses that, I want to make 100,000 to 200,000, like look at your systems and look at where in your systems can you really refine and make better. And even to like all areas of your business. And so Catherine, I have loved this conversation so much. And this has been so, so, so impactful. And so for people that want to connect with you, where can we find you?
Absolutely. You can find me at katherinepomerantz.com. And I'm very active on LinkedIn. Again, Katherine Pomerantz, Katherine with a K, Pomerantz with a Z. Hope that we connect.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, Catherine, thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. And for everybody listening, until next time. Thank you so much for tapping in today's episode on the Unbreakable Business Podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe. Do not forget to download our free tax filing checklist to help you get prepared and organized for tax season. And I will see you next time.